1 month ago, Augsburg and St. Thomas got together at MIAC Hall and put together one of the all-time regular season MIAC Classics. Eventually won 112-105 in 3 overtimes by the Tommeis. Here with the final 3 games of the regular season looming, they meet again at Schoenecker Arena as the Augies look for a little bit of revenge and a chance to solidify their playoff position. I'm Charlie Beatty, joined once again by Jason Darrow. And Jason, these two teams left it all on the floor when they met at MIAC Hall back on January 12th, very literally in some cases in terms of sweat. What do they have for an encore here today?
Hopefully another good one. That was a marathon, 55 minutes of basketball, and I think the fans were pleased that it kept going because it wasn't just 55 minutes of basketball, it was 55 minutes of excellent basketball, high-level play. Towards the end, maybe it trailed off a little bit because Augsburg had to keep many of their starters in the game playing 30, 40, 50 minutes. Booker played essentially the whole game, while St. Thomas was able to shuffle some more bodies in, and that's why they eventually prevailed in triple overtime.
And that's one of the really interesting things about these two teams is the contrast in style. Augsburg has gone with huge minutes from a lot of guys all season long. They have 4 of the top 20 minute eaters in the MIAC. You have to go all the way down to position number 37 to find St. Thomas's most used player. That's Anders Nelson, ranks 37th in the conference in minutes played, about 24 per game. John Tower just shuffles bodies in. It took its toll on Augsburg late in that game, as you mentioned. And we'll see how the Augies counteract that today. I would imagine step 1, don't play triple overtime.
Yeah, especially against a team that's deeper than you. I think step 2 is slow down Anders Nelson, not just in a scoring capacity, because the guy affects the game as a distributor much more. We saw in that triple overtime contest that when he has fresh legs, he can beat these Augsburg defenders off the dribble, and then he becomes a triple threat kind of player where he can score, pass, great offense in other ways, and he's great on the defensive end too. So got to try and wear and tear on these Tommeis today.
And the Augies in that game, you mentioned it, Nelson burned them, and he scored almost all of his points in the extra sessions. He actually only had 11 points going into overtime that day, and Nelson finished the day with 37. He was 12 of 12 from the line. He had 10 of those free throws in the overtimes, a lot of that in the third overtime that really iced the game. And the 7-point margin of victory really was a huge misnomer because the game was played in about a 4 or 5 point window almost the entire day. These two teams have played tight games now the last 4 meetings, really. They had 3 last year and 1 this year. Really nothing that tells us that we shouldn't expect the same kind of game today.
Yeah, any game that goes to triple overtime, the final score, if it's a big spread, that doesn't tell you what actually happened in that contest. And St. Thomas, although they are 21-1, they're 17-0, perfect in MIAC play. They've proven that they're beatable. That game's example A, the one that they played against Augsburg, but you have a game that went to overtime against St. John, 74-72. They're coming off an 85-78 win against St. Olaf, which was close at times, although St. Thomas had a big lead in the early going. So this is a team that isn't leaps and bounds ahead of the rest of the MIAC, despite their undefeated record.
But the fact of the matter is they've done the job in every MIAC game this year, and that says something in and of itself. Even the game before that on Monday against Gustavus, they were trailing against the Gusties, a hungry Gustavus team, and they managed to come back and win that. Then, as you mentioned, they had the 26-point lead on St. Olaf on Wednesday, actually trailing then late in the game. They had to score the final 13 points to put that one away against the Oles. But game in and game out, this St. Thomas team has found a way to get it done. We'll see if the Augies can stop that string today. See if the 18th MIAC game of the season will be the first loss for St. Thomas. And of course, there's a lot on the line for both teams here today. On the St. Thomas side, it's pretty simple. You win, and you are definitely the number 1 seed in the conference. You lose, St. John's has a chance to close that gap. St. John's is at St. Olaf today, so that's a big game. Of course, those teams are both qualified for the playoffs, but nobody knows their spot just yet. And St. John's and St. Thomas have to play again. That game will be on Wednesday night, so that will be a huge one. But if St. Thomas wins, they are the number 1 seed for sure, as they would get their 18th win. St. John's can't get past the 17-win mark. And of course, for Augsburg, you've got to fight off Bethel. Both of those teams come in with 12-5 records. Bethel today is in action against a Concordia team that still has playoff dreams, so that's not going to be an easy one. But it is at Bethel And so a chance there for the Royals to maybe surpass Augsburg. They're hoping, obviously, for the St. Thomas win today and a win of their own there. But there's big games all around the conference today. Hamlin and Carleton, a big one, of course, for the Pipers. They are still chasing Gustavus. Gustavus holding down that final playoff spot. Actually, Hamlin is a half game ahead of Gustavus. Gustavus is idle today at 7-11. Hamlin is 7-10. And then you've got Concordia right there at 6-11. So Concordia pretty much in desperation mode in that game with Bethel today. So a lot of interesting stuff around the conference. But as is always in sports, the fact of the matter is, if you win, you take care of your own business, things will work out just fine for you.
Yeah, just talking about these MIAC standings gets me pumped for the MIAC postseason, because I don't think there's any game that is a given going in. In fact, a lot of them feel more like a toss-up as you run down Augsburg, St. Thomas, St. John's, Bethel. You have a lot of teams that could be anyone in the conference on any given day. Maybe some of those teams like Concordia that are down at 6-11, like you mentioned, outside of the MIAC postseason right now. They don't feel like real contenders, but otherwise you have at least 5 teams that could make a run in the postseason.
Well, don't tell Augsburg that Concordia is not a real contender. Of course, they did beat the Aggies a couple of weeks ago, and that is a loss that looms large in the standings right now. If Augsburg had won that game, it'd be a very different story. They'd be 13-4 in the MIAC right now. They'd be a game behind St. John's. Instead of the fact they're 2 games behind St. John's and tied with Bethel, they'd be pretty secure, at least in that 3 spot, that they won that game. But that's, of course, a big if. You got to play the games. They lost on the half-court shot against Concordia. A win today would erase any negativity surrounding that loss, because this would be not only a game that you win against the conference leaders and a top 10 team in the country, but it would give you a whole lot of momentum going into that playoff chase. And Augsburg with a relatively favorable schedule down the last 2 games of the year. They'll play McAllister on Wednesday. They'll play a St. Olaf team that they've had a lot of success against in the last couple meetings this year and last year. Beat them in overtime earlier this year. And, of course, that's a potential playoff preview. Augsburg and St. Olaf. The Aggies will play on Tuesday night when the playoffs roll around, the quarterfinal round. They just don't necessarily know whom or where. Well, the 2 teams back to warming up. They were honoring the 3 St. Thomas seniors. A little scary. There's only 3 of them on this St. Thomas roster. They have such a huge group of players, and only 3 are going to graduate. With those 3 seniors, Michael Hannon, along with G.T. Johnson and Connor Bear, 3 big contributors for this St. Thomas team. And let's talk about one of them right now, and that's G.T. Johnson. He's a guy that doesn't jump off the page at you for this St. Thomas team, but in that first meeting, he had one job. It was to contain Booker Copeland. Nobody really contains Booker. We've seen that this year. That's why he leads the MIAC in scoring by nearly double digits per game, but he did a good job on Booker in stretches in that game, and he at least made him work for a lot of the points that he got in that contest.
Yeah, and it was imperative that G.T. Johnson was on Booker Copeland. I'm trying to remember who Booker got a switch on frequently in that game. He got a switch against a different St. Thomas defender a lot in that contest, and when he did, that secondary defender usually gave him a buffer to shoot a 3 from about 22 to 23 feet, and you know G.T. Johnson will not give that to Booker Copeland. He has the length and the speed to extend out to maybe 24, 25 feet on Booker Copeland and still contain him off the dribble. So I'm sure that Augsburg wants to fire at Johnson and try to get him in some foul trouble early.
The other thing with Augsburg that we can flip things around to the Augie side of things here, the last couple games, noticeably last Saturday against St. Mary's, very much so on Wednesday against Gustavus. They played 14 minutes with that 5-guard lineup, the final 14 minutes, and they've really had success with that. They're not going to start that way today. I don't think the starting lineup's going to change, but how much are we going to see that group today? Is that something you can do against this St. Thomas team that has a little bit more length and athletic ability than some of the other teams they've played?
Well, you don't have a center with St. Thomas that you really have to worry about all that much. Connor Bear, standing 6'5", is a real force, but he's not super lengthy or really a post player. He stretches it inside and out. Same goes for G.T. Johnson. And so you can go with a 5-guard lineup if you want and have Booker Copeland as your center. It also depends on how much Carter Duncan we see. Because because the last time I was with you for a men's basketball game, Duncan remained on the bench for most of the contest. If you can get him in there, I think he plays a whole lot today against a St. Thomas team that wants to run. It might cause issues for Mark Delvedova.
How healthy is Carter Duncan is the other part of this course. Sat out last Saturday with the back injury. Did play against St. John's on Monday. Very limited minutes against Gustavus on Wednesday. That seems like it was more matchup related than anything else on Wednesday, but he did play his season low in minutes in which he played. But of course, one of his best games of the year was against St. Thomas. Had a double-double, and that was almost like a coming out party for Carter Duncan. He made a huge impact in that game, especially on the offensive glass. He's a guy that can physically match up with a guy like Connor Bear, and we'll see how much he impacts this game if he can. Obviously, a back injury is something that, even if it's gone, it's never really gone, it seems like, and we'll see how healthy he is. But it should be a very interesting, entertaining game today. We've got a great crowd here at Cheneker Arena on this senior day for St. Thomas. These two teams are interesting matchups for each other. We saw that at Sime Elby Hall, and I think a lot of people around the MIAC, if they weren't at that game, heard about that game, and they weren't going to miss the rematch. We're seeing a lot of them here tonight.
Both of these teams can score it at will, too. I think that's part of the intrigue around this contest. You have a lot of players who are stars. Booker Copeland, we know, leading the MIAC in points per game by a large margin, is a thrill to watch. And with the freshman, Anders Nelson on the other team, Connor Bear, teams that like to run, get up and down the court real fast, that's the basketball that appeals to a lot of modern fans. So I'm not surprised that this one draws a big crowd.
And if you like three-point shots, this is the game for you.
Oh, yeah.
Augsburg with their 4/5 guards who can all hit them from the outside. St. Thomas, no slouch themselves, with guys like Nelson and like Michael Hannon who really like to light it up from the outside. And that's just a few of the names who can shoot three-pointers on this St. Thomas team. And they take a lot of them. I mentioned it when they played in January. I think it was about half, or maybe a little more, of the shots St. Thomas was taking this year were from outside the arc. We're going to meet the teams in just a second, but right now we want to remind you that Twin Cities Orthopedics is proud to be the official sports medicine provider for Augsburg Athletics. TCO is an all-inclusive orthopedic, sports medicine, and wellness provider offering world-class services at state-of-the-art facilities. Visit us at tcomn.com. And this game is brought to you by Wells Fargo, proud supporter of Augsburg University. Wells Fargo has a renewed focus on our customers and communities. Established 1852, reestablished 2018. Minnesota Coaches is the official bus provider for Augsburg Athletics. If you have travel needs for your group or special event, visit www.minnesotacoaches.com to learn more or to request a quote. Thank you to Minnesota Coaches. Well, another big Saturday in the MIAC as things are getting down to the wire here in this conference. Great crowd on hand at Cheneker Arena for St. Thomas and Augsburg. Let's go down and meet the teams right now.
Let's make the starting lineups for today's game. For the Augsburg Aggies, number 3, the 6'1" sophomore from Roger, Matt Carrick. For the St. Thomas Tommeis, number 4, 6'2" freshman from Indiana, Anders Nelson. For Augsburg, number 5, 5'9" junior from Iowa City, Iowa, Henry Mulligan. For St. Thomas, number 5, 6'2" senior from Wheaton, Illinois, Michael Hannon. For the Aggies, number 11, 5'11" senior from Iowa High School, Kevin McKiernan. For the Tommeis, number 24, 6'3" sophomore from Montana High School, Ryan Lindbergh. For Augsburg, number 30, 6'3" junior from Shakopee, Booker Copeland. For St. Thomas, number 31, 6'1" senior from Egan, G.T. Johnson. And for the Aggies, number 55, 6'10" senior from Assembly High School, Mark Dalavanova. And for the Tommeis, number 42, 6'5" senior from Fire Lake, Connor Bear. The assistant coaches from Augsburg, Charlie Scott, Aaron Shore, and David Tomamoy. The head coach of the Aggies, Aaron Rinks. For St. Thomas, the assistant coaches, Mike Keegan, Josh Rodenberger, Luke Levert, and Tim Thomas. The head coach of the Tommeis, Johnny Tower. The officials for today's game, Tommy Mallon, Josh
Minnesota-centric starting lineups there. The only player not born inside the confines of this state, Henry Mulligan, Iowan. Also the only non-Minnesota-born player, or at least Minnesota-raised player. We don't necessarily know where all these guys exactly were born on the Augie roster. St. Thomas, of their gigantic varsity roster, about 24 names on it, 6 of them outside of Minnesota, none further away than Illinois. Connor Bear and Mike Dellavedova in the middle, and Bear able to tap it back to Michael Hannon. And we are underway for St. Thomas and Augsburg. G.T. Johnson on the wing, and this is Anders Nelson matched up with Mulligan. And Bear on the outside, who had some three-point shooting success against the Augies, especially early when Dellavedova was giving him space in that first meeting. 12 on the shot clock. Nelson tied up by Mulligan, able to spin away and throws up a prayer floater, and Henry grabs the rebound. Physical defense early from the Augies, and they're going to run it. Mulligan, the trailer, got himself lost and bailed out by the fact that nobody was in that spot for St. Thomas. Booker Copeland, as we thought, matched up with Johnson. Here's McKiernan from deep early and a long miss. A long rebound to his former high school teammate Connor Bear. Hannon, but his high school ball just up the road at Cretin-Durham Hall. That's a tough take over Kevin McKiernan and an early make. St. Thomas with the first bucket on the board. A minute gone into this first half.
And we'll have to watch that matchup between Dellavedova and Connor Bear from the get-go, because Dellavedova may be taller, but Bear has a significant speed advantage.
Copeland with a step-back jumper as he tries to create space from Johnson, hits the front rim. Hannon in transition, pulls it up. Inside for Bear, who's not tall, but he is big and strong, and he's surrounded by a handful of three-point shooters like Ryan Lindbergh. Bear inside over Carrick, who is trying to switch over on the help, and St. Thomas leads 4-0. Carrick doesn't waste any time getting into the front court.
The Augsburg guards have been great at fighting through screens. Both Mulligan and McKiernan have stayed on their guys. It'll be tough for Dellavedova to determine how much he helps hedging on the screens up on the perimeter.
Copeland able to hand it off for Dellavedova, who will go to the line. The foul's on take your pick, as Johnson, Nelson, and Bear were all in the area. It's going to be on Nelson. Copeland probably could have taken that himself, but stumbled just a bit. Able to spot Dellavedova on the weak side, and 6'10". Mark Dellavedova is 20 out of 30 at the stripe on the year. I'll make it 21 out of 31. Played only 6 minutes against St. Thomas the first time they met. Just a better matchup mostly with Duncan in there, but he, as always, starts the game. Misses the second free throw, and Bear able to scramble down the rebound. 4-1 St. Thomas with 2 minutes gone. Bear stepping out, wants a back cut there. Hannon looked like he was open for a second. Bear slashing to the bucket again as he came off the curl. And he's got 4 quick ones. It's 6-1 St. Thomas. Carrick once again bodied up by Lindbergh when Mulligan opened for 3, misses long. The Augies 0 for 2 from the outside. Hannon back the other way. Doesn't take it. G.T. Johnson bouncing off of Dellavedova, who played that well, and then Johnson threw it right into the hands of Kevin McKiernan. Backdoor feed, and there's Copeland off the pass. The bounce pass from McKiernan cuts the lead to 6-3.
Off-ball action leading to both of the last 2 buckets.
Hannon with Carrick trying to go underneath the screen. Knocks down the 3, and Hannon hits him at 37%. Takes a ton of three-point shots. 110 of his 137 shot attempts now this year from outside the arc. Mulligan with the response, and it's 9-6.
And he's so much better when he can spot up like that. His last 3, he had to run a mile to get open. It's just much tougher to shoot when you're exhausted from getting open.
Extra pass. G.T. Johnson's really not an outside shooter. Bear can hit them, and does. Despite his big man stature, he's 18 out of 40 from three-point range, and a lot of that came around the stretch of that Augsburg game. He came into that game hot from three-point range, hit a couple shots early. Carrick and Lindbergh playing some tough physical defense. Eric looking for the screen from Copeland. Dellavedova. Copeland just popping up in different spots, and G.T. Johnson lost him for a second, and that's all Booker needs. It's 12-8, and the three-point shooting party has started early. They're going to call that one at 2. A couple substitutions waiting at the scores table, both for St. Thomas. From where we are, it's a little tough to see the names and numbers. We're basically above the game. Hannon misses, and that's off the foot of Nelson as Copeland knocked it off him. And actually, it was a sub apiece as Carter Duncan does come in. And Tom Madison into the game for St. Thomas.
Number 44, Carter Duncan, in for the Auggies, replacing Mark Dellavedova.
Full court pressure from St. Thomas. Crisp offensive start to this game as we expected. Only one foul so far. That was on Anders Nelson. Here's Mulligan spotting up again and knocking it down again. And that's a great sign for Augsburg as he's hitting early. Went through a cold stretch a little bit. Starting to work his way back out of that again as Nelson muscling in, but he lost the basketball. Popped right into the hands of Duncan, and the Auggies with a chance to take the lead. McKiernan, here's Carrick all alone, and that's in and out. Duncan battling on the offensive glass. It comes to Nelson. Good look for Matt Carrick, who hadn't had a lot of room early. Now Hannon takes it to the basket, and Duncan came over and blocked it, but he's going to get called for the foul. And you're not surprised that somebody closed out on Hannon, but he used it to his advantage there. And here comes the line change from St. Thomas. They're about to bring 4 new players into the game. Among them, Bert Hedstrom, one of the best three-point shooters in the conference. Riley Miller will come in. Elijah Hanna is going to come in as also Tommy Anderson. So all the starters will come out. Hannon's going to be replaced by Hedstrom if he makes the second free throw. Knocked down the first. Hannon this year is 32 of 32 at the line. Doesn't have enough free throws to qualify for the conference lead in that category, but he's one of a couple of St. Thomas players who's still not missed. Bert Hedstrom is 16 out of 16. These are outside shooters. They just don't go to the line that much, but they're automatic when they get there. Augie's down by 3. They've yet to lead. Mulligan's hit a couple of outside shots. Now wants to go inside. Bodied up there by Anderson. 10 seconds to shoot for Kevin McKiernan. Tough pass. They get it out to Mulligan again for the tie. Duncan right there on the offensive glass, and he's going to get fouled on the play. Great ball movement by the Auggies in recognition of how much time they had. Fouls on Hedstrom. We'll keep a close eye on events over at Bethel. I got to reset the shot clock because that ball hit the rim. Put it at 20 seconds after the foul. Good spot by the official on the far side. 14:37 to go here in the first half. Augie's down by 3. Mulligan picked up by Hedstrom. Little head fake there, but he lost the basketball. McKiernan alertly picks it back up, then takes a tough baseline jumper, and he knocks it down. 1-point game again, and here's Elijah Hanna. I almost want to call him Devin every time he touches the ball, but Devin's on the other bench. Foul away from the ball. It's going to be on Carrick, his first.
It's Carrick trying to defend in the post. He was locked in arms with the St. Thomas player who was posting up, and it's just one of those where it could go either way. Could be a foul offsetting, actually, on both teams.
That's a tough take by Hanna. It looked like he may have traveled. Also looked like he might have been fouled twice. In the end, he makes the shot. Here's Carrick, and has his pocket picked by Madison. St. Thomas with a 3-point lead in the ball back. A rare turnover from Carrick, one of the best in the conference at holding on to it. Hanna, it's a guy you can give the 3-point shot. Can't say that about many guys on this St. Thomas roster. Madison from well out. Long, great box out by Carrick to fend off Anderson. That allowed McKiernan to pick it up. And again, Madison picks a pocket. This time McKiernan back the other way. Hedstrom. Copeland coming out of nowhere to block it. And a save, and Copeland's back in play as well. What a sequence for Augsburg. And Copeland with an impossible block. Now wants points at the other end, and it's in and out. Hedstrom, not a guy who looked like he was all that confident taking it to the basket. And Copeland, who has worked his way into the top 10 in block shots in the MIAC, got that one as Anderson shoves Carrick to the floor, and Hanna knocks down the jumper, and Aaron Grease just holds his arms to the sky. I wonder how that isn't an offensive foul, and he can't even get an audience with the official on that one. 12:47 to play in the first half, and the Tommeis by 5 with their second unit on the floor. Carrick, and once again there's a steal. This time it's Anderson. Copeland's all over him as they go to the floor, and Hedstrom back the other direction. Hanna's on Carrick. He wants everybody to get out so he could back him down. And now he's got him in the post. That leaves Duncan on Madison. They'd like to switch that up if they could, the Augies. They do get it down to Hanna. And a good job by Mulligan to come over and cut him off. Riley Miller's the open man, and he's going to go to the line for 3. Carter Duncan late on the closeout. Aaron Grease still arguing about previous plays. In the meantime, the last 3 times Augsburg's come down the floor, 3 of the last 4, I should say, they've had the ball picked out of the hands clean outside the three-point arc. They've got to do a better job of holding onto it.
It's a spacing matter because whoever's dribbling the basketball, even on the perimeter, has teammates in his vicinity, and that means your offense isn't functioning properly. There should be better spacing where the ball handler isn't running into secondary defenders.
3 shots here for Miller. He had 7 all year coming into this sequence. That's just his second miss of the season. 6 of 8. Pardon me, 7 of 9. Aaron Ertz comes into the game for Duncan. Carrick goes out, and into the game is Martin Mitchell, who's been such a big factor in the last couple Augie wins.
With this small lineup, Tommy Anderson and Hanna are both being really physical down low and trying to post up every opportunity that they have a smaller Augsburg guard on them.
Largest lead of the day for St. Thomas is 7. Kiernan now running the point. Spotting up for 3 and drilling it. 5 points for McKiernan. Lead down to 4, and Miller, who brings it up. Hedstrom is left open, and he knocks it down to the other end, and Aaron Grease needs a timeout because the Augies didn't know on that last possession who was guarding whom.
Yeah, you can't afford mistakes like that, which it happened because St. Thomas brought in that wave of subs. It was the platoon swap that Johnny Tower likes to bring in, and even when you have a whole bunch of new players, you have to identify right away if you're in a man-to-man who you're matching up on.
Should be noted as well, big reason why he went to the bench, that last foul on Duncan was his second. That's a guy the Augies are going to need to stay on the floor. Well, Devani's Pizza and Hot Hoagies is Augsburg Athletics' first choice for a great meal. Devani's is located right across the street and offers the amazing Augie-matic discount. Get 10% off any order. Just tell them you want the Augie-matic discount at Devani's. And at Courtyard Minneapolis downtown, business travel isn't something you have to do, it's something you get to do. Their redesigned guest rooms are built for business with comfortable workspaces, tech drop ledges, and everything you need to be productive. Visit them at courtyardminneapolis.com/Augsburg. Courtyard Minneapolis downtown, it's a new stay. St. Thomas has led the entire way. They lead by 7 at the moment. Booker Copeland, G.T. Johnson back into the game. He's the only one of the starters who has returned. This second unit's really outplayed the first for the Tommeis. And they're putting together another good defensive sequence here. 7 on the shot clock. McKiernan well away from the basket. Mulligan from the volleyball line off the back iron, and that's not where the Augies want to be shooting. Hanna, they're going to let him take the 3. But nobody rebounds. Johnson with the putback. The Augies now trailing by 9. And it's gotten away from them here in the last couple minutes.
And that's another case of an Augie defender just losing their man.
Mitchell, Anderson the defender, and he knocked him over. That'll be the 3rd foul on St. Thomas.
Anderson could have picked up 3 fouls himself by now.
And here come the starters back in for the Tommeis. to join Johnson. Hannon, Nelson, Bear, and Lindbergh. 10:54 remaining in the first half. Big possession here for Augsburg. They've fallen behind by 9, their largest deficit of the game. One in which they have yet to lead. Copeland backing up, forcing one up off the back iron. Nelson wants to push the pace against Mulligan, looking for the step back, and Henry stays right with him. Ertz now battles with Bear. That's a physical bruiser matchup inside. And a grab by McKiernan as Hannon once again used his three-point shooting prowess and reputation to take advantage of the closeout. First on McKiernan. Nelson's been quiet so far, yet to score. Does have 4 rebounds. Kicks it across for Lindbergh, another three-point gunner. That one's off the mark and knocked into the Auggie bench by Bear. Lindbergh this year struggling with his three-point shot a bit. He only shoots 32%. And that reputation as a shooter coming out of Wayzata High School last year. Started all but one game this year. Both of these teams have been remarkably consistent with their starting lineups. 4 of the 5 players have started every game, and the 5th has missed only 1. Exactly halfway through the first half. Copeland with 9 to shoot, draws the double team. And he's in huge trouble. McKiernan, deep look. And Mitchell flying in for the rebound. The Augies will get a second chance at it from the same spot. Different result for McKiernan. And he's got 8 early points. Johnson quickly into Bear. Spinning on Ertz and lays it up and in. That's the thing about Ertz, is he's big and strong. He's not the quickest guy, and Bear's got good feet inside. McKiernan driving and takes it up past Nelson. Hot start for Kevin McKiernan. Keeping the Augies in it right now. They trail by 6. Inside they go to Bear again. This time right back out for Hannon. Takes it from the elbow. McKiernan is really overplaying that three-point shot. Hannon's taking advantage.
First, McKiernan had to drop to help Aaron Ertz with Connor Bear, and that's why he was flying out on the three-pointer.
There's Mitchell from the outside. He continues to stay hot after a 20-point night on Wednesday. St. Thomas right back the other way. Hannon's floater goes in, and the Augies, after makes, having trouble getting back quickly on defense. Women's team had the same problem in their game. Copeland, again, a tough look. You can tell he's outside of his rhythm right now. We haven't seen him in that state too many times this year. Bear once again right into Ertz, and there's the offensive foul. Perfectly played by Ertz, and yes, he flopped, and yes, John Tower's not happy, but Bear dropped his shoulder. Tower nearly left the gym arguing that call. McKiernan out and Carrick back in. Madison comes in for Johnson.
And if Aaron Ertz is closer to Connor Bear there, it's obviously an offensive foul because he made an aggressive move right away. And because of the buffer between them, he slowed up a little bit before he contacted Bear, but still see how it's potentially an offensive foul.
Yeah, Bear really loaded up to drop his shoulder into him, and the officials noticed it. Carrick, left hand take. Tough make there as he had guys leaning into him, and it's a 5-point game. Madison picked up by Copeland. Hannon this time does take the three, in and out. Copeland wants to push the pace. Madison leaning on him. Mitchell spotting up outside the arc, and the Augies are really hot from three-point range, and they've cut the lead back to 2.
Smart play by Booker Copeland, too. That's one of those times in fast break mode where he might just put his head down and go to the hoop, and the triple team was coming, he kicked it out.
Hannon underneath. Got away from Carrick, but missed the short one. Not an area he's used to shooting from there, Hannon. He's usually 20 feet away. Copeland wants to cross over on Madison. Up and under, a lot of contacts. And the foul's going to go against the Tommeis. It's going to be their 5th team foul. Copeland looks like he's going to get shots out of this. Fouls on Madison. Copeland at 90.2%. Knocks down the first one. You were not with us on Wednesday, but we were talking about how he was in the top 10 in every category in the MIAC, all the major categories except three-point shooting. So against Gustavus, he had a hot three-point shooting night, and now he is in the top 10. He's now 10th in the conference in three-point shooting. He was 14th before Wednesday.
And he's definitely going to get more involved in this game as it rolls along.
He ties it at 31 with 7:13 left to play in the first half, and the second unit back out for St. Thomas. They really did better than the first unit in terms of stretching the lead. Here's Bert Hedstrom bobbling the ball. Now Anderson on the far side wants to back down Copeland. Up and under with body contact. They let that go. Copeland spots Mitchell ahead of the pack. He'll take it on the baseline, looking for the lead, and he's got 8 points off the bench. And the Augies have their first lead of the day at 33-31. Good fight back here, because a couple minutes ago the Augies really couldn't get anything going, and they started hitting some shots from the outside. And they've spun back into this game, just like Anderson is spinning down the lane, and that's a foul on Copeland. I think he's maybe a little lucky he didn't get a call the last time down the floor. And I don't want to call it a makeup call because there was a lot of contact there, but I think they were going to get him if it was close.
I thought the prior possession was clean. This time, once he brought the arm down, kind of in a tomahawk chop, you knew they were going to blow the whistle.
Anderson gets the roll on the free throw. He's just a 50% free throw shooter this year coming in. Dellavedova and McKiernan back in for Mulligan and Ertz. This one can tie the game from one of the few non-Minnesotans on this St. Thomas team. Anderson, a junior out of Muskego, Wisconsin. And he goes 1 for 2. Now 22 of 44 at the line this year. Carrick, and Hanna comes out and bumps him, and that's the 6th team foul against St. Thomas. His first. And the other thing that St. Thomas does with all these bodies, it really helps them avoid foul trouble. Nobody on their roster averages more than 2.1 fouls per game. McKiernan. Nice floater in traffic and contact, and the Augies lead by 3. Edstrom back the other way. Inside to Anderson again against Dellavedova, spinning on the baseline, and Dellavedova stuck in the mud.
Especially if you lean on a posting up offensive player. If he spins baseline, you're going to look like you're falling over like Mark did there.
And a nice curl to the bucket, and Dellavedova pays it back at the other end. Nice find by Carrick. His 3rd assist of the game. 2nd assist, I should say, for the game for Matt Carrick. And here's Anderson again inside. Hanna. Back out Anderson. He'll spot up for the 3. And the Tommeis are cold from outside. 3 of 9. Augsburg 6 of 14. Copeland with Dellavedova screening 2 players. Madison nearly ended up on the St. Thomas bench. Timeout called by John Tower so he can get an earful, or give an earful to the official. Somehow in there he managed to convey that it was a full timeout between the arguments. The Augies lead by 5. And that was an interesting situation because Dellavedova wasn't really bodied up for a screen. He kind of threw a hip check on one player. That dominoed into Madison. He nearly ended up in Minneapolis, and Copeland had a free lane to the bucket.
Yeah, and it's a really hard play to officiate because you have a lot of players moving at a really fast pace. And yes, Mark Dellavedova isn't necessarily screening there. He was moving, but that doesn't necessarily make it a foul. If he's posting up against another player and then a St. Thomas defender just runs into him, it's hard to call. It's a really hard play to officiate.
It's one where you can appreciate the frustration of John Tower, even if you don't agree with it. But how about this Augie fight back here? They were trailing by, I believe, 8 points just a few minutes ago, and they were doing it against the starters. This second group came in. The second group was really what extended the lead, and the Augies have still pulled away their largest lead of the day so far.
Yeah, frankly, that second unit, like you said, for St. Thomas has been better than the first unit. Anders Nelson, essentially a non-factor on the offensive end. He had 4 fouls when he re-entered after his first stint on the bench, but I still don't think he's scored. He's not penetrating or creating offensive looks for the St. Thomas team, and it's a good sign for Augsburg. But they did that same thing when they played St. Thomas earlier this year, and then Nelson was fresh for the final stretch. So now you got to keep this lead going and potentially extend it before halftime.
12 bench points for St. Thomas, 8 for Augsburg. All 8 of those belong to Martin Mitchell. Madison kicks it out for Miller. Carrick may have gotten a hand on that. Now the Augies have got a run out 3-on-1. Miller the only one back, and he goes for the behind-the-back pass to Mitchell, and that kills the attack. Miller played that well as McKiernan just got too close to him. Also, nobody else went to the bucket.
Mitchell has to fill the lane on the left side there.
Here is Mitchell spotting up where he's comfortable, and he has just been unbelievable since the calendar turned to January. He's 3 for 3 from the outside today.
If you can shoot it like that, I guess you don't have to fill the lane. Stay out by the three-point arc.
Anderson fouled by Della Vedova, and that will be his first. It's just the 6th on the Augies with 4:21 left in the first half. It's interesting, the Augies are up by 8. Booker Copeland is their 3rd leading scorer right now behind McKiernan and Mitchell. That is a great sign if you're Augsburg, because you know he's going to find himself around 26 to 36 points by the end of this day. Edstrom out there with Miller, Hanna, Anderson, and Madison. This is that second unit. Ertz comes back in. Hanna kicks it back out. Anderson will try his luck from outside again, and that stops the dry spell for St. Thomas. Anderson certainly a comfortable three-point shooter. He'd attempted 31 entering play today. And here come the starting 5 for St. Thomas back to the bench as we're under 4 minutes. Back to the scorer's table, I should say. Mitchell overcooked that one, looking for a foul, didn't come. Hanna. And they're going to let him take that three-point shot. He's not a big threat from out there. Hedstrom is. McKiernan has been really aggressive defending the threes today. Anderson spinning, somehow not traveling. Hanna to the left hand, spins off, and Copeland with the board. 5 rebounds already for Booker Copeland. Wants to go up against Hedstrom, draws the foul, as Hedstrom looked like he hugged him a little bit. Whether he did or not, it's what it looked like. Copeland with a chance to get into double digits as Hedstrom now has 2 fouls.
It's even more difficult to officiate this game when you have 2 teams that are sprinting up and down the court, trying to play up tempo and creating a lot of contact on both ends. Tommy Anderson, whoever he's posting up against, those 2 are getting locked and they are bumping. There's a lot of contact inside.
Copeland 2 for 2 again. And we told you we'd keep an eye on what's happening at Bethel. The Royals lead 44-31 over Concordia at the half, so doing Augsburg no favors. Inside, Hannon got free from Carrick, and it's 44-39 with 3:03 remaining in the first half. Hannon with 11 points for St. Thomas to lead the way.
Cleared out for Carrick here.
Carrick against Bear. Gives it up for McKiernan. And again, right on line. 15 for McKiernan.
When you get that mismatch, it forces the other defenders to seep inside a little bit. That got McKiernan open. Johnson
not a three-point threat as well. He's really in there for almost exclusively defensive purposes in a game like this. Bear, tough shot and a foul called. Who's it on? If it's Copeland, it's 2. If it's Ertz, it's his first, and they're going to give it to Copeland. So this could cut the lead to 5. Copeland hasn't sat in several games, and it doesn't look like Aaron Grease is going to send him to the bench now. Since the start of the St. Thomas game, the Augsburg Augies have played 380 minutes, and he has played 357 of them. That does not include the 18 minutes today. Carrick once again matched up with Bear. Bear able to stay in front of him. McKiernan short that time. That's the first one he's taken today where it didn't look like he was really set. Nelson trying to take against Mitchell. A lot of off-arm action there from Nelson, but it's Mitchell who's going to get called for the foul. And Nelson, who among qualifying players, mentioned a couple guys that are perfect, but among qualifying players, he's the best free throw shooter on this St. Thomas team. Fourth in the conference at 85%. First foul on Mitchell.
He could be a player who, I don't want to call him a program changer because of how stout the St. Thomas team is every season.
It's a program continuer.
But yeah, exactly. The kind of player that a coach brings in and can lean on for potentially 4 years because he's a point guard. He's a true leader. You can see in the way he plays.
A rare two-miss spot to the line for Nelson. He has gone through some fallow stretches this year. In fact, right after that Augsburg game when he was so big, 3 of the next 5 games he scored in single digits. Isaiah Robinson has come in for Copeland just to make sure he doesn't pick up that third one. Robinson hasn't played since the last meeting against St. Thomas, and Bear eats up that shot from McKiernan. And Johnson up ahead of the pack. Nelson is allowed to run, and it's 47-43.
We've seen a lot of Aaron Ertz in this game, too. I'm surprised that we haven't seen more of Duncan or Dellavedova.
2 fouls on Duncan, I think
true.
has a lot to do with that. Carrick again, up and under, and he does that so well, and he got Bear on skates. Bear feeling it after that last block and really wanted another one. Nelson from the elbow, too strong, and the Augies with a chance to push it back to 8 or 9 here as we're under a minute to play in the first half. McKiernan with Ertz rolling to the bucket. Instead he goes to the far side for Carrick.
St. Thomas is happy to switch Bear onto Augsburg guards right here. Take advantage of this.
Carrick will try to shoot over him. An 11-second difference game in shot clock. Bear around McKiernan to lay it in. And a timeout taken, I believe, by St. Thomas. They want to get Riley Miller into the game here for this last defensive possession. There's a 4-second difference between game and shot clock, and I think the Augies would be well served here to use it all.
Yeah, I'd agree. Don't give St. Thomas a prime opportunity to make this a one-possession game before halftime in what's been a very high-scoring first half.
We expected points.
Oh, yeah.
Well, owned and operated by an Augsburg alumnus, 360 Wow Inc. is the parent company to several up-and-coming brands in the Twin Cities. 1-800-GOT-JUNK, You Move Me, and Shack Shine. If you're looking for a great job on a great team with great pay that is near campus, learn more or apply online by visiting 360wowinc.com. And the Corner Bar is a proud sponsor of Augsburg Athletics, located in Minneapolis' historic Seven Corners District. The Corner Bar is the perfect place for great food, outstanding pizza, and the almost world-famous Joey Wings, and there's tons of screens, so you won't miss a second of the action. Visit the Corner.bar for more information on the Corner Bar. You mentioned Connor Bear switching on to other players. He's a guy that you look at and you'd say, first impression, this is a big, kind of thundering guy out there, but he's got some quick feet and he can play a lot of different positions. Really good, useful player.
I'm probably underestimating his ability to guard the likes of Matt Carrick, Kevin McKiernan, and even Booker Copeland. But I think if you get that mismatch, you still try to take advantage of it with Carrick or McKiernan driving it. Wow, they are really letting them play right now.
Everybody upset, including a guy who looks like he's dressed as John Towers' doppelganger on the far side. He's got the same gray suit and no tie look. Carrick to the bucket, and he lost the ball. He wants a foul. Back the other way comes Bear. Ahead for Miller, a three-pointer from the wing, in and out. Comes back out to Hannon, and he can't hit it at the buzzer. And the Augies catch a break. Carrick still frustrated about the non-call at the other end. But the Augies will take a 4-point lead into the half. And a half that saw, for the first time in a while, Booker Copeland not play all 20 minutes. And they were able to hold serve after he left the game.
That also speaks volumes to what an excellent defender Booker Copeland is. That because of foul trouble, this is one of the few times that he's taken out of the game. He's such a great defender that he doesn't get into foul trouble and he can stay in the game for 40 minutes. Man, we'll have to see if he gets going offensively in the second half, though, because he's been quiet while Martin Mitchell and some of the other guys have picked up the slack.
And that's the positive and negative there. He only has 10 points, but he only has 10 points and the team's up by 4. On the other side, it's Hannon and Bear who've done most of the damage. They each have 13 in this game. Anders Nelson, once again, a quiet first half, had only 2 points. Bear and Hannon are combined 11 of 15 from the field. On the other side, Martin Mitchell, Kevin McKiernan are combined 10 of 15. So it's a very interesting matchup here. The Augies nearly hang half 100 on St. Thomas in the first half. We'll see what the second half has to offer, but coming off that first matchup, anything less than a fantastic game would have been a disappointment. This one's off to an amazing start.
It's living up to it. It surely is. And I bet in the second half that we see a lot more Anders Nilsson and we see a lot more Booker Copeland.
We will see in about 13 minutes and change from now. The Augies lead at 49-45 over St. Thomas at the half. We'll step aside, be back in a bit with some scores and some stats from this first half.
join us from the 2019, Lonnie Robinson, Brett Tuma, Alan Roy, Tyler Nicolai, Andres Humberson, Pete Wesley, Sam Edgar, Josh Peltier, Mike Cole, and Alex Healy. Please join us in honoring the team of 2009. And we cannot forget the head coach of both those teams, Steve Fritz.
Welcome back to Schoenecker Arena. That is not John Tower, but that we believe is John Tower's doppelganger. He was very avid in the first half in terms of his support for the St. Thomas Tommeis, who are just taking the floor now. Augsburg is back out. What a first half it was. 49-45, Augsburg leading, and the shooting numbers in this game are off the charts, Jason.
Yeah, for both sides. Augsburg 56% from the floor. St. Thomas just a smidge behind that at 54.5%. And Augsburg shot it really well from deep in high volume. 8 of 18 on their three-point shots, while St. Thomas 4 of 13. And that's probably the only area where they haven't shot the basketball all that well, although the Tommies were also 5 of 10 at the free throw line, including a rare double miss from Anders Nelson at the stripe.
Well, the Aggies knew this was a big game coming in, very important for their seeding in the MIAC playoffs. Of course, they have qualified for the MIAC playoffs. 5 of the 6 teams are set. It's just positioning now. They're not getting any help from the Cobbers of Concordia with 12 minutes left. They're down 60-37 at Bethel. The other games with big playoff implications today. Hamlin in a tight one with Carleton down in Northfield with 12:54 remaining. Hamlin leading 40-38. That game's been back and forth all day. At halftime, St. John's leading St. Olaf. Here's the thing to look ahead a little bit. If St. John's were to win that game, the Aggies, no matter what would happen, well, if they win today, they would guarantee themselves at least 4th place in a home game in the first round of the playoffs. If they did not win today, all they would need to do is win one of their remaining 2 games, one of which is, of course, against St. Olaf, to ensure that the Oles can finish no better than 5th. Still 3rd or 4th are really the likely spots for Augsburg. If the Oles can come back and win that game, of course, Augsburg has a very, very, very outside chance of passing St. Thomas, or rather St. John's. It would mean the Johnnies losing their remaining games and Augsburg winning all of their remaining games, and that would put you 2nd. Crazier things have happened, but that's not really what you want to bank on at this point.
No, and St. John's does play St. Thomas in one of their final 2 games, but I'm guessing whatever other opponent St. John's has left on the slate, they will be a favorite in. And so the odds of Augsburg vaulting up and getting a bye in the MIAC postseason seems really unlikely. That said, I think that Aaron Grease and his team can be pretty satisfied with getting a home game in the first round of the MIAC postseason.
St. John's other game, which would be Saturday the 16th, is against Carleton. Both of those games for St. John's are at home. This is their last road trip of the year. Aggies will start with Copeland. Duncan starts the second half, coming back in with his 2 fouls. Carrick, McKiernan, and Mulligan. Starting 5 for St. Thomas of Johnson, Lindbergh, Nelson, Bear, and Hannon. Augsburg with the ball. They'll move left to right in their second half. 20 minutes up on the clock. We'll see if that's all we need for these 2 teams who needed 55 back on January 12th. Leading scorer in that first half in this game was Kevin McKiernan with 15 points. Martin Mitchell, the Aggies' second leading scorer, with 11. Copeland has 10. 13 apiece for Bear and Hannon for St. Thomas in the first half. And Mulligan, and that's an illegal screen called against Copeland, who just picked up his 3rd foul. So 10 seconds into the second half after he sat late in the first half with 2. And this is a big situation now for Augsburg to manage Copeland's minutes. He will guard Johnson. The unfortunate thing is he's such a valuable defensive player. Johnson's not an offensive player. That's not where they'd like to have him. Mulligan fighting through the screen. Lindbergh is open on the reversal, and it's a 1-point game. That's right out of the textbook. Just have somebody flash to the weak side off that screen and roll. Carrick back the other way was grabbed up high by Lindbergh, who picks up his first foul.
And I agree with the decision to leave Booker Copeland in the game. If he's going to foul out eventually, he's going to foul out, but at least get a certain number of minutes out of him. And right now he's fresh. You're coming out of the locker room. He's got legs under him. I know he's going off to the bench right now, replaced by Martin Mitchell, but I don't see why you replace him, because these minutes aren't all that different from the minutes at the end of the game, although you do want good free throw shooters in the contest at that point.
I think if the Aggies were trailing, it might be a different story. But with the 1-point lead, at least for now, they'll bring in Mitchell, who was an offensive spark plug again in that first half. Has to pass out of it there. 8 to shoot. Carrick once again is going to take on Lindbergh. A tough fall away. And Bear out wrestles Nelson for the rebound. Kicks it ahead. Hannon back the other way. And Carrick challenged his shot and Bear ends up with the cheerleaders. The Augies for now have a 5-on-4. McKiernan for Mitchell. Carrick on the baseline, and he will lay it in. A play that he started, and he gives the Augies a 3-point lead again. Bear doesn't want to wait. Bear against Carter Duncan. He's going to go for the tie right now and comes up short. Carrick the board. 6 points for Matt Carrick after that last layup. The Augies' first basket of the second half. Well, we had Duncan if he could have found him, but there were a lot of tall bodies in the way. McKiernan back out for Mulligan. Bounce pass Duncan. Up against Bear. Forces it in. And the Augies trying to push this advantage, and the higher they go and the longer they have it, the more they can afford to leave Copeland on the bench with 2 fouls. Nelson for 3, and a rushed shot doesn't go.
Both of those last shots from St. Thomas seemed forced. Bear did not have to shoot the 3, nor did Nelson early in the shot clock.
Carrick thought he probably was fouled again, but that time Lindbergh got the block. Nelson, Johnson, that's a travel. I don't know if he's protesting to the officials or if he's saying to his teammates, where were you guys? But that was a textbook travel.
And Augsburg got lucky because Matt Carrick was well behind the offense for the Tommeis, still tracking back when that travel occurred.
And with Copeland on the bench, Johnson goes to the bench as well. He's replaced by Riley Miller. McKiernan, crossover against Nelson, has to turn and take a tough one. Nelson ends up with the rebound. Miller back the other way. Bear. Duncan's got 2 fouls, and there's number 3. And Bear has a chance for a 3-point play. And now the Augies have a decision to make with Duncan and Copeland both with 3 fouls. Aaron Grease trying to say he was straight up and down, and to a point I think he's right, but Duncan left his feet. I know that's not supposed to matter, but in officials' eyes it usually does.
If you jump straight up, it should make 0 difference in whether or not it's a foul.
Bear completes the 3-point play. It's a 2-point game with 17-19 remaining in the second half, and Duncan stays in with his 3 fouls. Carrick, step back 3, too strong. Miller the board, and St. Thomas can tie it or take the lead. Bounce pass for Bear. Mitchell pulled it away, but also fouled him. Defends the potential layup, and Mitchell picks up his second foul. Now Ertz comes in for Duncan.
It seemed like Bear was already losing that basketball before Mitchell reached in and tried to cram it away.
3 team fouls already on Augsburg in the second half, and 2 of them very key. Nelson on the baseline. Somehow got out of that double team. There's Hannon. Still a 2-point Augsburg lead. They've led for nearly the last 15 minutes. Bear, that's another block, and it's called on Mitchell. They're going to point to the arc, and that's 3 on Mitchell, who's picked up 2 quick ones.
But that's one where the official, the arc doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when it's a player posting up like that. It's not a drive.
It's also a shooting foul, which Bear never actually got up to take the shot. He has a chance to tie the game at the free throw line. Came in 28 of 44 from the line. So that's 4 team fouls on the Augies in the first 3:10 here in the second half. And other than the first one against Copeland, you can debate the other 3. So we're tied up at 53. The Augies trying to tread water here until they can get some of their key players back into the game. Somebody's going to have to step up. Mitchell stays in with his 3 fouls. He's got the basketball with 8 to shoot. Wants to take on Lindbergh, who's bodying him up. Out to Mulligan. Got away from Hannon, and he missed everything. And the Augies right now a little lost offensively. Dellavedova trying to cheer them on from the bench.
They were in sync for the first several minutes of this half, but without Booker Copeland, you can only keep chugging along for so long.
Mulligan does a nice job fighting off Nelson there. Trying to kick it back out for Miller. They go to Bear. Ertz threw it away. A nice job by McKiernan. He dove down for the double, and Bear panicked.
he recovered well, too, because Bear didn't have an open lane to kick it back out. And Aaron Ertz was still playing great defense, shuffling in front of Bear.
I think Bear thought that McKiernan was going to stay there, and then when he went back to his man, the big man got crossed up, Connor Bear. That's the thing with Ertz out there. They can really double freely. He's just not much of an offensive option. He can get himself to the bucket. It could lead to something as Mitchell bodied up. Ertz, that's going to be a foul on Nelson. And so much for what I just said. Aaron Ertz is going to have a chance for a three-point play. I mean, it was a little bit of luck, but he still made a nice move on Nelson. That's 2 on Anders Nelson.
Smart job by Ertz, too, to follow the play, be there to clean up, get the defender in the air with a little head fake, and then put it in.
Ertz 4 of 6 at the line. He played 10 minutes in that first half. Misses the second one. Mulligan keeps it alive. McKiernan for a 5-point play, and that's second straight air ball of a 3 for the Augies, and they did not need to take that shot.
Yeah, you get the ball back on the offensive rebound off the free throw, fading away a little bit just as you get the basketball. Reset the offense. You got a whole fresh 30 seconds to figure out a better look.
If you're the Augies, this is the time to slow this game down. Nobody boxed out Bear off Nelson's miss. McKiernan instead will push again. Wisely doesn't keep it going. Looking for that screen and roll with Ertz. Mitchell against Lindbergh. Mulligan against Hannon. Right now it's a lot of one-on-one for the Augies. They only have 6 to shoot. Carrick got a step on Miller, and he forced it, and he's looking for contact. Back the other way, Miller. Nobody stops him, and he missed the shot. Bear boxed out by Ertz. And Copeland's getting ready to come back in. Carrick, blocking foul against Miller. He gets up and sprints away before he does anything worse than that. So Copeland is going to come in for the Augies with 14:43 left, playing with 3 fouls. Madison and Hedstrom come back in for St. Thomas for Hannon and Lindbergh. New shot clock, rather. He only had 24 seconds on the shot clock. I guess it hadn't gone below 20, so pardon me. The Augies still have plenty of time to work with here, however. Copeland up against Bear. Bear looking to draw a charge and pretty obviously didn't. That'll be his second foul. So the team fouls now even at 4 in the second half, and we're only 5.5 minutes in. Free throws are going to matter here in this second half eventually. They left McKiernan alone in the corner. Ertz battling for the board. Lost it on the way up, but Bear gave it away to Carrick and then fouled him. And Carrick hits it, and Bear's got 3. What a heads-up play by Carrick. Bear just telegraphed the pass. And that's twice in this second half. He's given the Augies buckets right underneath the St. Thomas basket, and he's got to come out. Not to mention the finish by Matt Carrick.
Oh, yeah. He's floating around in the air, kind of kicked his legs around to maintain his balance. I think Bear on the other side, his game is sped up right now. He's making decisions quicker than he'd like to because of the state of this game.
Carrick among the top 10 in the MIAC and free throw shooting, completes the 3-point play, and the Augies still have the lead. They've retaken it, I guess I should say. Hedstrom trying to even it right back out, and does.
He's the one guy that the Augies have to start pinning down on the defensive end because he's getting open.
Copeland forcing it against Madison, and right now he's just not himself. Trying to create shots that aren't quite there. Nelson back the other way for the lead, too strong. Copeland with an easy board. Wants to push it. McKiernan for Mulligan. They never went back to McKiernan, and he drains it. 18 for McKiernan, his first points of the second half. We picked on him for his 3-pointer after the free throw rebound, and Copeland just picked up number 4. With 13:26 left, Copeland's got 4 fouls, and now you've got a huge decision to make if you're Aaron Grease, and right now he is going to go to Mitchell. Let's see how long they can survive this.
It's mind-boggling how little Booker Copeland has played in this game, and yet Augsburg leads by 3.
Mitchell's got to be careful too. He's got 3 fouls. They don't have a lot of options after him, and he just picked up his 4th. So now what do you do if you're Aaron Grease? Other options in that spot might be Robinson. Might even be Will Schmidt if they want to go deeper down the bench, but he hasn't played much lately. Aaron Grease right now looks like he's going to leave Mitchell in the game. 13-19 left.
Those last couple calls don't seem all that consistent with the game, the way the game has been officiated.
And right now it is going to be Will Schmidt coming off the bench. He is a player we haven't seen a lot of in games this year, especially at home. He hasn't played much. He's a guy who has got some size to him, Schmidt. He's 6'6". He's also an outside shooting threat. Very good three-point shooter. First-year player out of Totino Grace. He comes in a big spot today in a one-point game. And he's got to be the guy to get it in bounds, and he rolled it to Carrick, who was, I think, thought he was being grabbed. The Augies are lucky they don't give up a layup off that, but that's not a great introduction into the game for Schmidt. Madison, the jump stop, and he gives St. Thomas the lead, and John Tower takes a timeout. 62-61 with 13 minutes remaining. And the Augies season right now, or not season, but this game, and a big one it is, in the balance, and they've got some really tough coaching decisions to make. Aaron Grease, Charlie Scott.
Yeah, with both Copeland and Mitchell having 4 fouls, you have to manage them carefully for the final 13 minutes. But I stand by what I said earlier. I don't think these minutes happening right now differ all that much from the final couple minutes of the game, besides the fact that you want good free throw shooters in the contest for that final stretch of the game. So I'm letting Booker Copeland and Martin Mitchell play. I try to maximize the time that you can get out of them, because if you keep them on the bench, you're just limiting the contributions that they can have on this game. And I realize not all basketball minds would agree with that.
Right now, the only 2 that matter are down on the Augie bench, and they've chosen otherwise. Right now, in a one-point game, they want to make sure that they have those guys for the stretch. If it gets any worse than this, I would imagine that thinking will change real quick. Mulligan got by, missed the layup as he tried to go to the left hand. Ertz on the floor, and it's going to be Augsburg basketball, as I say, went out off of Anderson. And credit that to the hustle of Ertz, who has played his biggest game of the year here. He has been needed, and he's delivered. I think they're talking about the shot clock here. Right now it's at 30. I don't think it should be at 30. It may be 26 or 27 because Mulligan's shot did hit the rim. They put it at 14. Lindbergh comes back into the game. I guess they're going to say Mulligan's shot didn't hit the rim. I thought it clearly did. Should be enough to work with for the Augies, but you'd like to have a full shot clock. If I'm Augsburg, I'm trying to extend this game, take long possessions at the offensive end to make sure that St. Thomas doesn't have too many opportunities at the other end. The foul trouble the Augies are in. Into Ertz now for Carrick. Has to go back out. And boy, if Hedstrom was looking, he had a gift. Mulligan from the elbow, and that's a big shot as Augsburg goes back in front. They're going to need some guys to step up here. 2 guys out there right now who are irregular contributors for Augsburg in a huge game. Inside, Hanna skips to the corner for Lindbergh. St. Thomas up by 2. Mulligan up. They're going to bring a trap here. He spotted it and got out of the way.
That's an underrated play by Henry Mulligan to avoid the trap.
Miller had an arm on his back and was diving at the basketball, then lost out to McKiernan, who ties it. Aaron Grease yelling for that foul here. Next foul for Augsburg would put St. Thomas at the line. Tommeis have 2 to give. And there's a foul on Schmidt as Hedstrom lays it in. We saw this in the women's game earlier today. The first half was physical, and there wasn't much called. And then the second half, not quite as physical, and there were a lot of fouls called. And here, it's almost the same thing, and that favors the deeper team, which the Augies are not. As Isaiah Robinson comes in for Ertz.
The last at least 3 or 4 fouls on Augsburg have all been marginal contact. Fouls that probably would not have been whistled in the first half.
Hedstrom completes the 3-point play, and the Tommeis lead by 3. 11:34 remaining, and Robinson in the backcourt. They want to put pressure on everybody, but especially him. Mulligan trying to deliver. Robinson looking for an offensive board. Miller back the other way as he splits the double team. Kicks it back out for Hannah. Lindbergh. They want to go inside Nelson against Mulligan. Hannah the elbow jumper, and any shot he takes, I think the Augies will live with. Carrick back the other way, couldn't hang on to the ball, then try to take the fadeaway. Boy, if he'd held on to that, he was in for at least a layup opportunity. Nelson's been quiet today. Hannah gets away, and Robinson commits a foul. And when you've got inexperienced players in there, those things are going to happen. And now it's a 5, potentially 6-point deficit. And the decisions have to be made with 10:46 left. How long do you stay with this lineup?
At this point, the way the game is trending, something has to change. I think this is the point where you uncork Booker Copeland and Martin Mitchell, get them back in the game.
They're going to bring in Duncan. His foul trouble's not as stark, as it's not a 3-point play, so a 5-point game. And the Augies in a possession where they absolutely need a basket. Carrick off the screen from Schmidt. This is where he can be dangerous. Spotting up for 3, too strong. Mulligan battles for the long board. Schmidt can hit that shot. Carrick hanging and hitting. And now Nelson back the other way. Mulligan's done a really nice job on Anders Nelson today, it should be said. And he does another nice job on him. Nelson lost the basketball. And they're going to say it's off of Mulligan. I'm not sure that's the case. Looked like Nelson was trying to pick it back up and lost it out of bounds. As Duncan comes in, as Bear is coming in. Schmidt out.
Henry didn't put up much of a fight on that one. He threw his arm back into the kind of cradle for Nelson, and I think he might have poked it out.
70-67 with 10:05 left in the game. Isaiah Robinson guarding Hedstrom. The Augies continue to try to buy time. Hedstrom looking for the floater. Robinson didn't go for the board, and now Hedstrom's got another chance. Hannon. Bear inside, up over Duncan. And that second opportunity should not have happened. Robinson just sort of lost track of the basketball.
That was a perfect defensive possession until Robinson didn't get that rebound.
Back out for Mulligan. He'll try to drive against Lindbergh, and Mulligan, a strong take to the bucket. He's got 10. Big factor here in the second half, Henry Mulligan.
And both he and Carrick have attacked the basket more than usual because of the extension of the St. Thomas defense after they were hitting their threes in the early going.
What a pass by Hannon to find Bear. He somehow wrapped that around 2 defenders. Still a 5-point game, 9 minutes to go. McKiernan picked up by Nelson. Carrick trying to shuffle off Hannon here. Duncan from the weak side. Bear fights him off and grabs the board. And I think if the Tommeis get a bucket here, you might see some substitutions. Kicked across for Lidstrom. Augsburg got hands on that. Hannon for 3. Bear. What a catch by Nelson, but Robinson got a hand to it, and that will give the possession back to Augsburg. Nice heads-up play by Robinson to just poke it off Nelson's body. Hedstrom out and GT Johnson back in. Haven't seen really Johnson since Copeland left the first time. And the Augies with a possession where they can keep it close, keep it one possession. They can afford to leave guys out. But if they go down by 3 possessions, you have to start making some changes and risk the players that have 4 fouls. Mulligan. Again, those players with 4 fouls, Martin Mitchell and Booker Copeland, and they've had 4 since early in the second half. Carrick against Hannon. Duncan on the cut. Wasn't ready for the ball. And again, a big defensive possession here for the Augies with 8:07 left as Miller comes back in for Johnson. John Tower may be going offense for defense here already with 8:07 remaining. Bear spotting up for 3, too strong, and the long rebound ends up in the hands of Lindbergh, and the Augies have to play the survival game again. Lindbergh, extra pass, Hannon. Here's Nelson open, and you can't give him too many looks. 8-point game, and Copeland's off the bench. Carrick kicks it out for Robinson. Very quick player, Isaiah Robinson. Alertly doesn't take that shot. McKiernan trying to go around Hannon, spots up and hits. And a timeout taken by Aaron Grease. 7:19 remaining, and Copeland will be risked now with a 6-point deficit. And again, even before the 4 fouls, this hasn't been Copeland's banner day, and we're so used to him just dominating, putting up 30. He has 10 points in this game, all in the first half, 6 rebounds. He's 3 of 8 from the field. He's forced a few more shots than maybe we're used to. But that just means he's kind of that powder keg that's ready to go. And if he can get hot here down the stretch, he can carry the Augies back into this game.
It's a weird situation, too, for Booker. I'm interested to see how he handles it, because how often, if ever, does he have to sit this much in the second half, let alone in an entire game? And I am surprised. If you think that Booker Copeland's going to play the final 7 minutes here, let's say you're in Greece and you're hoping that he doesn't pick up a foul for this final 7 minutes, then why not stretch out that 7 minutes over the course of the 14 or 15 minutes that you had when he picked up foul number 4? And I get it. I get why coaches take players out in situations like this to save them for the end of the game. But now he's going to be running on fumes for the final 7 minutes, probably giving everything that he has. Not running on fumes. I know he plays 45 minutes sometimes.
He's about as fresh as he's going to get.
Yeah. But I would have tried to spread out that time. Or see if you can get more than 7 minutes out of it.
Actually don't have in the live stats here information on how many minutes Copeland has played, or anybody else here. It's not tracked. But it's not nearly as many as normal. We can say that, and we know that for sure.
He had 18 in the first half.
Bear cutting to the bucket, missed the layup, and a break for the Augies. He had a great look, but went up with his right hand. And now Carrick back the other way. He and Mulligan have really carried the load here with the foul trouble in the second half. Carrick wants the screen from Duncan. This time he rolls, dribbled it off his foot, but able to recover. Back out to Copeland with 9 to shoot. Guarded, as always, by GT Johnson. Pulls up, missed it, and Bear fights off Duncan for the rebound. Nelson on the crossover. Bear for 3. And he's missed back-to-back shots that were open.
It's a really smart play by Anders Nelson to bring the double team by pulling up for the shot, then passing.
And Carrick will go to the line. He's been looking for those calls really since late in the first half, and I think he finally got one as Miller bumped him with his chest.
He had the 1-and-1 on the second chance, but otherwise, when he's attacked the hoop, he hasn't usually got the whistle.
5 of 13 shooting today. That, of course, does not count as a miss with the foul. 5 Augies in double figures today, including Matt Carrick, who now has 12. Also 8 rebounds, which leads the team. Connor Baer at the other end with 24 and 10. Even with those 2 misses, Baer is 10 of 14 shooting today. As Carrick will get a breather, Mitchell will come in with 6:15 remaining. Carrick probably is running on fumes right now because he has had a lot of weight on his back here in the second half. 4-point game, 6:15 to go. Oh, they had Miller all alone down the lane. Baer didn't see him. Baer, and once again, good defense by McKiernan coming from the weak side. Copeland wants to push. And he is grabbed by Johnson. That will send Copeland to the line with 5:54 remaining. Johnson saying that Copeland is warding him off with that arm, which is, he was close. Copeland sometimes does get a little aggressive with that off arm. You don't want to give the officials any reason to foul you out here.
Well, Johnson's not wrong. Copeland does use that arm as he dribbles down the floor, but that doesn't make it a foul in that situation.
He can cut it to a 2-point game with the second make as he's now got 11. Hedstrom in for Hannon. Basically, those two guys are clones of each other. The only difference is Hedstrom's left-handed. Copeland hits them both. So a 2-point game, despite all the adversity here in the second half. The Augies, who led at the break, are in it. There with a handoff for Hedstrom, working against Mitchell. Didn't take him to the basket. Johnson doesn't take Copeland either. Now Nelson's on Copeland. Stays off of him, and Nelson's dangerous enough to hit that shot. Mulligan into the front court for the Augies. Quiet in the gym here. Mulligan lost the handle, but got it back. Backdoor feed for Copeland. Lays it in. Great read as Johnson was just hugging him out there 30 feet from the basket, and Copeland set him up. Nelson on the baseline. Tipped by Copeland. Got 2 hands on it. 5 minutes to play. A 2-point game. Augies needing a stop here. And it would be a huge momentum boost if they can get it. Miller, the extra pass. Johnson, they'll just let him take it, but he hits it. Johnson coming in with 6 of 21 from 3-point range. McKiernan with a long 2 is an answer, and I don't think that's the shot you want. 82-77. Hedstrom again on Mitchell. Back out for Baer. Down to 9 to shoot. St. Thomas has slowed things down a bit here in the second half. Nelson might have traveled. Instead has to take a step back 3 off the front rim, and another long offensive rebound for the Tommeis. And those are just soul crushing right now if you're Augsburg. And if they get a bucket here, this place will probably erupt. Miller for Johnson, inside Baer. Duncan gambled, and McKiernan couldn't block that. 7-point lead for St. Thomas with 3:43 left. All of a sudden the time's just melting away. Martin Mitchell finds Duncan down low. He finds Copeland looking for some contact, and Baer didn't oblige him. He still hits the shot. And Copeland's offense is warming up. He's getting himself to the rim. Johnson again in the corner. Fakes the 3 this time. 16 on the shot clock, and the Tommeis doing a really nice job of taking as much time as they can on these possessions, making Augsburg really defend for the full 30 seconds. Nelson. Hedstrom for 3. No good. And a chance for Augsburg here to pull within 1 possession. And Copeland wants to take it himself into the crowd. McKiernan for 3. Long rebound, battled for by Mitchell. Down low, Duncan. And it's a 3-point game. And Baer, I think, might have taken a shot in the chops. He's holding his jersey over his face here. Didn't see where it happened. It must have been in the scramble. He's got to come out of the game right now as Hanna and Lindbergh come back in for Baer and Miller.
That's
the other side, Ertz for Duncan.
Yeah, Sorry, Charlie. That's the only explanation for why Duncan was so wide open on the scramble play. Bear was slow getting back up after he took one in the face.
I don't know if it might have been a loose leg or foot. I mean, he and Mitchell were both diving for the basketball. So it's a 3-point game. Copeland now guarding Lindbergh. Hannon also came in for Johnson. Hannah left alone for 3. No, but there's Lindbergh all alone. They lost him. And how many killer offensive rebounds has St. Thomas had here in the second half? They lead it by 5 with 2:14 left. Matt Carrick is going to check in just a moment. I'm actually a little surprised he stayed out as long as he did. Mulligan, they stay with him. 10 seconds to shoot. The Augies, if they're going to use this much time, absolutely need some points out of this possession. They get it to Copeland. A deep 3, almost banked it in. Ertz pestering Hannah. If you're going to foul, he would be the guy to foul out there on the floor right now. 15 seconds. Now you got to play it out. 1:30 remaining in the game. And a spinning, he got away from Ertz and he blew the layup. Copeland back the other way, straight at Lindbergh, fouled, and he came up short, but he has a chance to make it a 3-point game again. And they can finally get Carrick back in.
That's big for the final minute 17, and over these last 5-6 minutes, it's really demonstrated the basketball IQ of Booker Copeland. You mentioned him getting more to the rim. Things haven't been working for him off the dribble, but he's been really strong off the ball by determining when to cut to the rim and help his teammates out, make himself available, and get easy hoops that way.
Knocks down the free throw. He is 7 of 7 from the line. He has 17 points. And Carrick in for Mitchell. Bayer comes back in replacing Hannah, who is going to be kicking himself for that last miss, especially if the Augies are able to come back and tie it. Copeland pure on both. So you need one more stop here with 1:13 remaining. Plenty of possessions left in this one. Edstrom for Bear. Ertz will back off of him. Nelson off the screen. Kick to the corner for Lindbergh. Copeland. Short on the shot. Rebound, Carrick. And the Augies can tie it or pull within 1. McKiernan is hammered. The shot's blocked, but he'll go to the line for 2. Fouls on Hedstrom, that's his 3rd.
Good take by McKiernan. Either he can step back and take that open 3 in transition, or he can attack the hoop. I think either was fine, but he definitely wanted to get shots up before that shot clock elapsed with 42 seconds left to play now.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why taking it to the basket's the better idea. There's still a shot clock that you can defend.
Yep.
And if you can get yourself within 1 here and defend the 3-point line, there's no way St. Thomas can make it a 2-possession game on the next one. And he gets them both. So a huge defensive possession here. And what do you know? St. Thomas and Augsburg coming down to the wire. 40 seconds remaining. 26 on the shot clock. Difference is about 12 seconds. Don't give up a 3 if you're Augsburg, especially now, as St. Thomas has used some time. Nelson. Hedstrom is on the outside. Down to 8. Carrick the defender. Ertz hedging over. Pass is tipped. Bear comes down with it. Blocked by Ertz, who saves it to Mulligan. And the Augies can go ahead. Copeland with the ball. Around Hedstrom. Into Bear. He's fouled and hit it. Unbelievable finish here for the Augies. And Copeland can put them up 2 with 5 seconds remaining. And how about the play by Aaron Ertz at the other end to reject Bear on the weak side. And at the other end, Connor Bear picks up his 4th foul.
No quit in Aaron Ertz.
And Copeland makes it a 2-point game. Timeout St. Thomas with 5.8 seconds remaining. And if the Augies can hold on to this, this will be one of the best wins in recent memory, aside from the championship game a year ago. The way they've had to battle in this second half has been nothing short of unbelievable.
They haven't been handed anything in this game. They've had their best player in foul trouble. Maybe the best player in the conference, Booker Copeland. You have Martin Mitchell in foul trouble. They've had a lot of adversity here today. You have Carter Duncan not only battling foul trouble, but apparently some injury issues. We don't know the details there, but he's been hobbled, it seems, in the last couple of games. You have some mismatch problems. Mark Dellavedova is never in the game.
And guys like Aaron Ertz have stepped up. Will Schmidt's put in a couple of minutes. You know, Isaiah Robinson's been able to at least buy some time for these guys with foul trouble, and they didn't give the game away. They didn't contribute any points, Robinson or Schmidt. Ertz only has 2, but he just had the block of the year down at this end, and it was an absolutely incredible play.
And St. Thomas has had a couple of miscues down the stretch here. You talk about the missed layup by Hannah, a couple other places where they faltered, but for the most part, they've played a strong game today. I think Anders Nelson, with his 7 points, 3 of 9 from the field, is the lone player who didn't step up to their normal expectations.
5 3-point shooters out on the floor right now for St. Thomas. Doesn't mean they'll look that way, but you have to respect it. And now the Augies will call the timeout. I think they're going to get Ertz out of the game if they're going to have St. Thomas with this lineup. And the Augies will, of course, put on the full court press. If you're wondering about a foul, which obviously you still don't want to foul in this situation, but if Augsburg were to foul in a non-shooting situation, it would only be a 1-and-1. It would be the 9th team foul. 86-88. Booker Copeland off the bench, off the deck there to potentially put in a game-winning 3-point play on the back of Aaron Ertz's spectacular block. And Augsburg probably doesn't know it, but Bethel won today 74-56. Hamlin's about to win 71-62. St. John's beat St. Olaf 74-57. So a win here for the Augies guarantees them at least 4th. And they still have the inside track, I believe, on 3rd. Augsburg and Bethel splitting the season series, so you get into some complicated tiebreakers there. But every standings I've seen, and maybe it's just alphabetical, lists Augsburg ahead of Bethel still.
And they'd really, put their stamp on this weekend by giving St. Thomas potentially their first loss in MIAC play this year.
And they do bring out the 5-guard lineup. This is the first time we've seen it today. We talked about it in the pregame, but right now it's out there to defend the 5 St. Thomas guards. It's a small guys game with 5.8 seconds left. Hedstrom to inbound. Gets it into Miller. Mitchell's got to chase him. 3 seconds on the clock. Kicks it across for Hannon. It's going to take the 3 for the win. Came up short. And the Augies survive Schenecker, and they knock off St. Thomas, the first MIAC loss for the Tommeis this year. And if this win is any kind of springboard, Jason, and it very well could be, if the Augies are playing maybe back here in a conference title game, this is the game that did it down the stretch. They finally get a win against kind of a top opponent. They were 0-4 against top 25 teams this year, including a heartbreaking loss to St. Thomas at home. But they come in here and they do the job. And what an amazing, amazing finish for the Augies down the stretch.
And they prove that they can battle even with Booker Copeland on the bench for extended periods of time in the second half. They were playing crucial minutes in the second half with him having to just sit there and watch the game. I'm sure that's just killing Booker on the inside. And his teammates stepped up. You talk about the way Carrick played, as well as McKiernan and Mulligan, especially the guards Aaron Ertz inside with Carter Duncan on the bench. This team showed that although some of those players farther down the bench aren't playing big minutes, they have depth that they can trust in this final stretch of the season.
And St. Thomas at the end of the game clearly going for the win. They were trying to set up that play to Hannon the entire time. He fumbled the initial catch, which didn't help him. never really got a good look at it. The Augies, I think, defended it about as well as you could.
Yeah, and Hanna, he had the head fake, drifted toward the corner and got a look, but like you said, he bobbled the basketball, just didn't get a good handle on it. I think they handled that final possession well. Aaron Grease, of course, had saved plenty of timeouts. There's still 5 timeouts sitting on the scorer's table that these two coaches could have used, and I don't know if either of them want them back, but another game where Aaron Grease also coached it well and proved that keeping his players on the bench probably paid off, because Booker Copeland made some phenomenal plays at the end of the game, including the and one towards the end that put Augsburg ahead.
Well, the only way these two teams could meet again is in the conference title game. And with all due respect to the St. John's-St. Thomas matchup, which produced a 2-point overtime game already this year on this floor, and they'll play again on Wednesday. If these two teams met in the title game, I think it would be appointment viewing, because the crowd here was great today. The crowd at Sim Elby for the first game was fantastic, and they saw 2 of the best MIAC basketball games of the season in terms of excitement value. And I have to say, because this, I don't know if we ever give Aaron Grease enough credit, but the way he handled his players in the second half, I think, is a stroke of genius. Well done, Aaron Grease and Charlie Scott and the rest of the coaching staff as well. He had 2 guys with 4 fouls with 14 minutes left, and nobody for Augsburg fouled out. That's impressive stuff.
It is, yeah, and he got solid minutes still out of Martin Mitchell and Booker Copeland. Copeland was clearly ready for those last 7 minutes that he got to play after sitting out much of the second half, and ended up producing just enough for Augsburg.
Well, the final here, 88-86 in a thriller once again between Augsburg and St. Thomas. We'll see if they meet again in the postseason, but the Augies, we do know this, will have a home game on February the 19th in the opening round of the MIAC playoffs, thanks to the results today. We'll see who they play. Right now, that matchup would be Hamlin. There's a lot of basketball to be played next week to decide that. The Augies will be on the road at McAllister on Wednesday. We'll have that for you. We will have the reverse matchup, you and I, at home on Wednesday. The women hosting McAllister, and then, of course, we'll be there for the doubleheader with St. Olaf next Saturday to finish it out. That'll do it for us today. So for Jason Doro, Tom Ritchie working the doubleheader on the camera, I'm Charlie Beatty saying so long. Thanks for watching a fantastic day of Augie basketball on Augie Game Day.